myself. I hate big crowds, and I entered for the first time today in the diamond room, and I wanted to leave. Uh, I thought I thought that was where I was going to give the talk, but so I'm very happy to be here, and I'm from a little bit closer. I live 5 kilometers away. Um, so I'm from Incredible Biotech, and do I advance the slides myself? Or oh, another reason why I'm glad I wasn't in the diamond room. Uh, so I'm technologically challenged. Very glad for CHPC. You'll see why. So I come from the biotech industry in Cabo Biotech. Many of you may know us. And as Paulo's giving a talk, I'm thinking, wow, science really does impact the people on the street. I was thinking, but scientists have a lot less hair. I don't know why they bother with shampoos, but there is, there is that application that most of you would be impacted by, indirectly from that sort of molecular dynamic molecular simulations and chemistry side of things. And so, but when it comes to biotechnology, actually, what I'm excited about is these applications and what we are currently involved in will actually impact you directly, and you will know it, and you'll see why. But okay, so regarding in Cabo Biotech, we're a biotech company. We started the idea was conceived back in 2000. Uh, it was going to be a mushroom business. The two guys that wanted to start it realized, no, actually, their skills were better suited to start a biotechnology company doing DNA sequencing. And so um, that's what happened, actually. They quickly put together a committee to get the funds together, and the company was actually officially opened in August this year, 2002. The company's, I love working for them. I've been working for them for 15 years now. And so you'll notice we started in 2002. We are now in 2022. That's 20 years. And we were fortunate enough to go to Cape Town, the whole company. So we just came back from a holiday in last month, actually. And it was fun to see that the company actually started off with actually 5 people, and now we are over 100. We have our head office in Pretoria, but we have offices in Kenya, East and West Africa, Kenya, in Lagos, in Senegal, Tanzania. Really, we spread across the whole of Africa. And we actually have customers recently from Trenton University. I think that's somewhere yeah, in your country. Yes. And so our reach is not just Africa, but actually we are global. And so you guys heard of the COVID pandemic, right? We we sorry, bad joke, but we were the guys, the company that actually supplied the rapid testing kits for COVID. So we did well during the pandemic, and thanks to science, we saw as new variants came out, we saw how quickly um, the biotechnology industry would respond to this. And so we were at that interface where we saw a new variant, a new kit coming out, and we were the ones that actually took those kits to market so that they were actually being used and implemented in the clinical environment. So we're happy to be a part of that interface, where science touches the public. I love that. So in terms of definitions, scientists love definitions. Essentially, Incal Biotech is a one-stop shop genomics company offering biotechnology services such as DNA sequencing services and products. Our customer base includes life science, research, and diagnostic spheres. So we work a lot with universities, but as I've just mentioned, hospitals, clinics, doctors, and everything that surrounds the molecular biology field. We have our put in there. This is just produced by local artists, very proud, 20 years as a company. Why I'm particularly proud is because during that period, many companies fell away and unfortunately didn't survive the pandemic, but we did, and so I'm really grateful to be a part of that. Okay. Okay, so in terms of next generation sequencing, the company started in 2002, and we were actually the first one, the very first company in Africa to have and implement next generation sequencing instrument. A company called Roche, which you all know of, but their first instrument, next generation of high throughput DNA sequencing instrument, was the Roche. It was called the 454 GS20. Um, this at that time, this was 2005, 2007. They were capable of producing a whopping 20 million bases. Wow. But anyway, uh, relative to other instruments which produced maybe a few kilobases worth of human DNA nucleotides. So our capacity to sequence exploded 20 million bases in one run. We actually got many hundreds of people to come and celebrate this fact back in the day. That's how big it was. Okay, but now I don't know if you're all familiar with the genome sequence of humans. Our DNA is pretty busy. Our cells are pretty busy. Our chromosomes are pretty large. The length of the human genome is actually around the region of 3.2 gigabases, 3.2 billion bases. Now, if you want to sequence across that entire 3.2 billion, did some very complicated math here. We would have to sequence, we have to do 20 million bases in a run. But to do 3.2 gigabases, we'd have to run that instrument 160 times. Cost of each run was in the region of 200,000 Rand. Meaning, if I wanted to sequence my genome, I would need 32 million Rand. Sorry. So I don't have that kind of money lying around. I don't know many people that do. Furthermore, if we had to sequence at the right depth to do the type of analysis we need to do, we would need a depth of 30x. So we need to sequence each base 30 times. That pushes the cost up to no. This is unreasonable, and so we didn't even think about implementing this technology for real world solutions, medical solutions. I think that conveys the message, right? Just 2 years ago. Now, I think I'm gonna just go back and I don't know. Did I skip a slide here? I forgot to tell you my outline. Let me just go back, right? I have time. I did the first one, right? So we good. I'm going to do the second one, and I'm going to tell you why we have issues as a company. I'm going to tell you why CSR was a good friend to make and keep, and what we did in response to our issues. Okay, then last 2 years ago, we actually 3 years ago we partnered with a company called PacBio. It's an international company now. They're on the Nasdaq, and they just introduced this instrument called the Sequel 2E, which we have and we run. So the capacity to produce data and actually do human genome sequencing now was within reach. From 20 million bases back in 2005 to 30 gigs in a single run. So that made the aspect or the prospect of human genome sequencing much more palatable, much more within reach. And the cost then came down from 960 million to 120,000 Rand per sample, per human. Bargain. I love bargains. Actually, this talk is very well timed, and this conference is very well timed because I'm going to tell you about a new instrument that we just launched. But just so you know, so our capacity to produce data has exploded, and we can produce data much more cheaply. But for that instrument, this was the computational requirements. Now, this is all like computer jargon to me. And that's because it is computer jargon. But you guys can make more sense of this. And normal labs and normal companies don't have access to this type of specs. We actually got a quote for this machine for somewhere in the region of like 2 million rand. And then we would need to hire an engineer to put it together. We'd need to hire a systems administrator to look after this baby and make sure it's running. And so the cost was just phenomenal. We're like, no, I mean, how do we even build this thing, right? We are biologists. I don't even know how to handle this properly. You can't let me loose on this. And so, can you see? Uh, I mean, with the um, ease of data production came some computational needs that we needed to address. Really, really legitimate needs. We can have the best ideas in our mind about how we are going to bring the solutions to market, but we didn't have the computational resources. Those ideas were meaningless. And then last month, just last month, PacBio again, they changed the game and they introduced this new instrument. It was actually launched at the American Society for Human Genetics. This is called the Revio, launched August 2022. Now, in 24 hours, we can actually produce 4 human genomes at 30 times coverage. Cost below 50,000 per sample. And this is just the beginning. So this previous instrument I showed you was the Sequel 2E. This Revio is like having, in one run, can produce the data of 4 Sequel 2Es. So our ability to produce data is even more powerful. But so is the computing requirements. And then these guys are just too busy. They produce another instrument, and now the other instrument is called the Onzo. They're different type of instruments. One's a long read sequencer, produces reads in the region of like 15, 20,000 base pairs long. And then the Onzo, which is their latest short read instrument, that produces reads in the region of 200 base pairs. Different applications, right? So you can see computationally maybe we produce 20 million reads on that instrument. And now we're looking at producing like 1 billion bases, 1 billion reads on one run of the Onzo. Computationally, this is intense. This is intense. We need help. But now, actually, this is where I want to spend most of my time. So we have long read sequencing technology. We have short read sequencing technology, and the applications for which these are relevant are very different. But you see now with the 2 types of sequencing platforms we have. Oh, by the way, the overarching theme here is that in Cover Biotech, we have computational issues. I'm just leading up to that main theme. With short read sequencing, we could tackle a certain market, tackle certain applications. With the long read, it had its own domain, so to speak. But now we crossed the great divide. And you can see these different complex disease research, neuroscience, immunology. I'm not sure if you can see it from there, but we can actually tackle the whole spectrum of biotechnology, molecular biology needs at the interface of medicine now with our 2 different technologies. I don't have up here on the slide something very, very important in the beginning, that this technology will actually impact you directly one day and you will know it. I just want to tell you what's happening these days in the market right now. Cancer is touching more people than we care to admit. Okay, it's actually scary. If we look at the amount of money, for instance, America is dedicating to cancer research, it dwarfs everything else. None of you sitting in this room does not know anyone that has not been touched by cancer. But our ability to detect cancer is limited. Up until very recently, I'm not going to show you, I couldn't show a picture. It was a very powerful picture. But it was, I don't want to get in trouble. If this thing goes on YouTube or somewhere, I could get sued. But I just want to tell you in a nutshell what we're able to do these days. Because of this Onzo system, and because we can produce so many millions of bases at such high accuracy, we can take anybody's blood right this moment, and we can do the sequencing on the Onzo platform, which is very, very sensitive. And we can actually tell if your blood is sitting with cancer linked nucleotide mutations. We can actually tell if your blood has mutations that's oncogenic, that's coming from some tissue somewhere. So, in a nutshell, we can do pre screening for cancer. And this technology, like I said, is going to touch you directly one day. It's going to touch me directly one day. I know people that it's impacting directly, family members, friends. Our ability before to detect these mutations was very limited because we could sequence a lot of DNA, but let's make it a little more simple way I understand it. Let's say we take your blood and we spin it down, and all your cells come to the bottom, and your plasma sits in the top. In that plasma, which is a cell-free portion of your blood, there's what we call circulating free DNA. It's coming from all sorts of cells in your body. Not necessarily a bad thing. And your cells are always dying. Some of them, through apoptosis or other natural means, they they disintegrate and the DNA enters into your bloodstream. It stays in the plasma, not very harmful. Circulating free DNA. A small portion of that circulating free DNA actually is tumor circulating DNA, meaning some of that DNA actually had its origin in some tumor somewhere. And because we're sequencing human genomes with such ease these days, we know exactly which mutations correspond to which type of tumors. Don't take my word for it. Check it out yourself. But now, because we can sequence it at such depth and at such accuracy, we can take someone's blood and we can sift through these mutations and say, okay, it looks like you've got a tumor happening in this type of tissue. We can actually not just find the mutations, but correspond those mutations to a specific type of tissue, which is amazing. Which is amazing. This is what we call. Thank you. Now we almost died. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and you shall be released. Our ability to detect, but then remember, sometimes, and don't we all know this? Someone says their cancer has gone into remission. The doctors have did the blood test, and oh yeah, it's gone into remission. Why? Because they can't detect the mutations anymore. Is it actually true though? And we find no. What happens sometimes? Relapse. Why? Because we were not able to detect the mutations at those lower titers or those lower quantities, but not anymore. Our limits of detection have dropped. We are way more sensitive, 20% more sensitive than the next best technology these days. And I'm so thankful. And now we can screen a patient through his journey to whatever therapy we choose. And our ability to know the condition of this patient is much more accurate. Okay. Uh, Quickly, so we had issues with all this data we produced. We had bioinformatics skills that were lacking. We needed specialized software. We needed computers that we just couldn't afford. And we had cloud options, but it's with we bandwidth tied, and so those were not viable options for us. And so we're happy to make friends with the CHPC, and so we were able to. And I have people, at a wedding you have to give a vote of thanks, and then you have to give it, but you're gonna make some people upset. Most people don't know me, so it's fine if you get upset. But I'm gonna say some names because these people are the ones that are in my head that actually helped us as a company to get going with some of our applications. So obviously it's Werner, it's Charles, it's Enos, it's Inque, and we could come with our problem and we say, guys, this is my data. Please let me store it, and they would. And please set up the software for me. I don't know how a scheduler works. Can you help me? I need to store it. I need to analyze it. I need to access it. And I need a special queue to run my software. I don't know how to do all these things. Could you help me? We have very, very sensitive, very important data. Please help. And so they were able to address all these issues actually. And so we had ideas in our mind about how we will take project to market, how we will take data and produce the necessary variant calls to make those calls regarding what mutations these were and what possible tumors were in the person's blood. Now we can do that thanks to the CHPC, and the cost obviously is way cheaper than buying our own system, way cheaper than putting it in Amazon, and knowing the people personally helped. And so we had issues, right? And we were thankful that CSR came to our rescue, and thankful for the long-term relationship we've had with them. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the talk. So my question is with regard to, and this is not CHPC related, but rather on the cancer side of things. Are you looking at genomes within South Africa itself? Because based on the mutations that are seen within different ethnicities, there are different markers that you pick up for triple negative breast cancer, for instance. So has this been taken into account when you are sequencing from Inkaba? And with that regard, are you putting together a database that other researchers could work with?
So they are. Here's a fact for you. There are reference human genomes available, but not for Africans. And correct? Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Do it quietly so I don't get embarrassed. Also, for instance, we have a human reference genome, is very famous, called HD38. It's actually not even one individual. It's actually a composite, right? A composite genome made up of several individuals. Do those mutations, can they be related to an African environment? No. That is a good question. And so part of not just producing data, but producing African relevant SNPs is crucial to this whole endeavor. And so that's why, and we are busy sequencing genomes for Africa, and then annotating, and then building that database. And we're working with different, obviously, academics throughout the country, and working with a lot of people in Nigeria, because they are the most, like the Yoruba, they are the most diverse, and they have the most helpful mutation list, mutation or variant, let's say, spectrum. And so with that in our database, it'll give us more power to make our calls in a way that's more relevant to the African population. So yes.
Thank you. So I want to ask with regards to the COVID test kits. Because I know at least 2 people who died. They tested negative from COVID, but they had symptoms. So why would that be? Does that happen with other test kits, not just for COVID?
That's above my pay grade to answer. Even doctors don't know that answer. But that's true. But no, look, I don't want to say much because I know what you're talking about, but I'd rather take this when the camera's off. Because I have my own opinions, but I don't value my own opinion that much. But I'd like to share my thoughts with you. But this is way too sensitive to make a public answer.
From CHPC here. Question for you. You're obviously doing more and more as the machines get more and more powerful. At what stage do you reckon you move the computing in-house?
That's the deer caught in the headlight. Look, a simple answer is that once the consortia get the act together, especially in South Africa, and say we're going to commit X million amount of rand, like at least 50, 100 million, we would say, okay, then we could dedicate and also hire the necessary staff to man these bigger computers. But until that happens, it's hard to say. So at the moment, we're doing things in silos, in either shipping off stuff to be done. We're either doing things on the CHPC itself. But in terms of when we will get our own computer, it's not just a matter of getting a computer. I can go to a shop and get a computer, but I need a place to put it. I need the right flooring. I need CO2 canisters there, or whatever the case is. It's a lot to think about. We need a data center, not just a room to put a computer in. So there's a lot to think about. Until we can get the funding secured, we can't think about that seriously.
I'll ask a follow-up question to that then. As we hang around in this high performance computing industry long enough, what we find is computing, of course, keeps getting more powerful. And there are some things that the problem level stays the same. In this case, the size of a human genome isn't changing as quickly as computing gets more powerful. 20 years ago, we had the first mapping of a human genome, and it took one of the world's largest supercomputers a long time to run. Now we're into it's accessible, the costs are coming down. What I'll ask you to do is envision into the future. If you could do these runs on a website or your phone or some other handheld device and take the cost out of the equation, what changes then qualitatively in your research? What becomes possible to do if you take the sequencing costs out of the equation entirely and make it essentially free, like you could do it on an app? This will happen during your career.
If you take me for a visionary, you got it wrong, man. But I see where you're going, and I would love that to happen. Oh my goodness, that would be amazing. But that's what we would like as well. I don't know how that actually will happen, but I hope it does.
Thank you. All right. Before we go, let's thank the speaker again, and so the Nikis and the CHPC would like to thank you for your beautiful talk. So this will be the end of this section. We would like to thank the two speakers, the one from Manchester and the one from just back door here, Pretoria. So thank you very much for your beautiful talks. Please engage with the speaker. I think you'll still be here till the end of the conference. So I have some questions, and I'm sure a lot of people have questions that they don't want to ask in this forum because we are all very shy. Or we don't want to ask very sensitive questions like you admitted to. So please just engage with the speakers. And thank you very much.